Okay, so this is the second video in the Global Tapestry unit, where we're going to specifically look at the developments in East Asia between 1200 and 1450. And this video is going to focus on the Song Dynasty of China. What we're looking for, and the question that you need to be able to answer at the end of this video, is the factors that contributed to the development of the Song Dynasty, and how did they, being the Song, unify their population, rule their population, and provide. I would have out my notes from chapter 1.1 so you can follow along, but I would also add to them from the videos. So our first thing that we need to do is we need to describe the factors that led to the rise of the Song Dynasty, both internally and externally. And then secondly, we need to explain how the government of the Song unified, ruled, and provided for their populations. Finally, what you're going to be doing in class and how you're going to apply this information is identify these processes in a primary source. So we begin with a review of what the global tapestry is. To contextualize this lesson, we know that prior to 1200, many classical empires across the world fell, and they were replaced by new empires and states that had governments that were more centralized. These areas that we're going to be focusing on are East Asia, Dar el-Islam, South and Southeast Asia, Sahel and Swahili Sub-Saharan Africa, the Aztecs and the Incas, and finally, Western Europe. And we know that we're arguing in this unit that during this time period, regions in Afro-Eurasia and the Americas recovered from the classical collapse by establishing new empires and trading states who had governments that created policies and institutions to unify, rule, and provide for their populations. So in Song Dynasty, we need to know, first of all, why it developed, but also how their government unified, ruled, and provided. So we begin with the factors that led to the development of the Song. And you can see the Song dynasty on both of these maps. China is ruled by dynasties, and the Song, or the Song, was not the first. Rather, the Song was one of many dynasties or family rules that developed. Unfortunately, these earlier dynasties collapsed due to invasion and also due to internal problems. The dynasty before the Song was known as the Tang, and the Tang suffered from problems in unity. There were Buddhists, there were Confucius, there were Taoists, and none of them really got along. Secondly, they were invaded by outsiders. So the factors that led to the development and the establishment of the Song was, first of all, it made better sense to live in a larger empire because larger empires provide for survival and prosperity, meaning that the smaller individuals and the states that China split up to after the fall of the Tang did not promote survival and prosperity as well as a large empire would. Secondly, China is surrounded by enemies, especially the Mongols to the north. And these Mongols were constantly invading and harassing the Chinese. So the external factor that led to the development of the Song dynasty was essentially protection from the Mongols and the other tribes. So what led to the development of the Song? Internally, it made better sense to the Chinese people to live under an empire because empires provide for better survival and prosperity. And externally, these empires offer protection from outside invaders. When we get into the government of the Song, the first thing we need to understand is how they unified. The Song when it was established, had some pretty significant issues of unity. And they focused on religion. In China, you have three main religions that were going on. You have Confucianism, which is not a religion, it's a belief system. But I'll talk about that more in class, which focused on relationships and fulfilling responsibilities. You have Taoism, which focused on balance between humans and natures. And then you had Buddhism, which instead of focusing on relationships and superior and inferior ideas, focused on equality. These didn't jive. And so there was this competition of what was the correct right and wrong. So when the Song came to power, they made Neo-Confucianism. Neo-Confucianism is a synced religion because it blended ideas from Confucianism, focusing on virtuous or moral behavior in your relationships and fulfilling your responsibilities. Taoism, to live in balance with nature, very simply, and Buddhism, providing for correct behaviors to guide your soul to the afterlife. So by combining the ideas of these three religions, essentially what happens is China's now unified. And it unifies because it has ideas that appeal to people of different faiths. One thing about the Chinese during this time period is they believed in many different things. They always worshiped their ancestors. They believed in certain Confucian ideas, but they also might be Buddhist. They never abandoned totally one for the other. This is a quote that kind of explains what Song China was about. Through conformity to these ancient rituals and social conventions, that's the socialism and the Taoism, each individual, Buddhism equality, could promote a more humane and moral society. So now we have these common ideas that are bringing people together. So we need to make a government that's efficient. So how did the Song rule their population? And again, we're focusing on two things, the legitimacy and the bureaucracy. And the legitimacy was established by the mandate of heaven. This is very unique. In China, the ruler is giving the right to rule because of the ancestor gods. So people, because they were given the right to rule from the ancestor gods, were automatically loyal. They thought that since this family won the war to establish their empire, that the gods had given them the right to rule. Now, here's the unique part. The mandate of heaven required that emperors rule justly, that the emperors and his government follow the policies of Neo-Confucianism. So, if they did not, they would lose the mandate of heaven. And how you know that is there's bad things, poverty, disasters, warfare. And so, if you're experiencing a lot of that situation, the ancestor gods are telling you that you can replace the ruler. So the mandate of heaven was legitimacy because the right to rule came from the ancestor gods. But to keep it, the emperor had to behave and do a good job, because any sign that the emperor was not doing his job would lead to his replacement. Secondly, when we talk about the bureaucracy, we're talking about the scholar gentry. The scholar gentry was a class of government workers that were highly educated. Here you see a scene where prospective people who want to become part of the scholar gentry on the left are taking the civil service exam. Yes, two are cheating, but that's okay. The score on this exam would dictate whether you got a job as in the scholar gentry and the level of job that you had. So this is a very efficient bureaucracy because you had to be highly educated. And the Song expanded this. They made more government permissions. They created opportunities for lower class people to become gentry members by getting an education. Now, don't think it's public school, but what they're doing is they're creating this large group of people who were given their job not from their birth, but from merit. That is why it's called a meritocracy. These guys were very good at their job. They collected taxes, they enforced laws, they created policies, and they made the Song government very efficient and promoted great survival and prosperity. And the Song greatly increased that. When you talk about the last thing that these governments are doing is providing for survival and prosperity. And we know that the first thing is they're creating a market economy. A market economy, as you remember, is an economy based in trade where people are producing things not to survive, but they're producing things to trade. So the government's role was to provide the opportunity, the laws, and the means to do this. The Song government created the first paper money. It's called flying money. And they did this to create more efficient transactions. Because if you don't have paper money, you have to use gold and silver coins. And it's very dangerous to carry gold and silver coins around, as well as very bulky and difficult to make big purchases. So the Song government is providing the opportunity to support the trade in their market economy. Now, China has always had a very big population, the most in the world. This is a population pyramid of the Song. And as you can see, China has a very large young population. The big dent around 30 is a result of the fall and overthrow of the Tang. So this population needs to be provided for, and their survival needs food. And one thing that the Song brought in was champa rice. This is a picture of rice paddies where rice grows. Champa rice was a revolution because it grows in many different environments. And secondly, it creates 2 harvests a season, and in some areas even 3. So you're doubling the food supply through being able to make more rice fields and being able to grow more of it. Technologically, we see terrace farming and the irrigation. Even though it looks like snow, it's not. It's the sun's reflection on the water. So there's got to be an irrigation system to get the water there. Also, they used and experimented with certain fertilizers. So the food supply was doubled, but now you also have to provide a way to get it to the places. This is where the Grand Canal comes in. This is a picture of the Grand Canal. You can see it starts in Hongju on the south and goes all the way up to what is now Beijing. And see, the problem is that in the Song China, this was the population center. This is where a majority of the population lived, but this is where the champa rice was produced. So how do you get it there? Well, the Grand Canal allowed for champa rice to be shipped north, and also goods such as silk, tea, porcelain, and steel to be shipped to the south to trade. So the Grand Canal was very vital to the survival and the prosperity of the population. Lastly, China had to produce things for trade. And China has things that people outside of China want. They have silk, porcelain, tea, and steel. So in order to profit from this trade, the Song Chinese begin to incorporate new technologies and water power into the production of those things. And this is proto-industrialization. Proto-industrialization promotes the production of vast quantities that can be sold and bring in gold and silver, i.e., the market economy. Most of this, though, was not sold in China. It was sold in areas such as India and along the Silk Road in Dar es Salaam. But it did make China the richest in the world. So when we look at how the Song Dynasty government unified, ruled, and provided for their populations, they unified through establishing common ideas through Neo-Confucianism, a synced religion that brought together Buddhists, Taoists, and Confucianists. They rule through the legitimacy of the mandate of heaven, requiring them to do a good job or the people would take them out, and a very highly educated bureaucracy called the scholar gentry. They provided for their population by establishing a market economy in which flying money was used, great agricultural production through certain innovations in technology that grew lots of champa rice, and finally participating in trade using proto-industrialization to produce silk, tea, porcelain, and steel to trade and bring in gold and silver.